In this sixth part about the dimensional gates, we will not be able to enter the biblical texts that I have already prepared for a few weeks, or the quotes from Ellen White about it, because I have started pulling the thread and started to find even more things with a tremendous connection. Some of them, I tell you the truth, it was until the very morning while I was shaving when several things came to my mind, and I was shaving. I stopped shaving. Quickly, I noted down so as to not forget. Then I shaved again, another flash came, and so on continuously. And I think that what you're going to see today is going to show a series of things that are going to surprise you, especially those of you who are Christians, in a rather shocking way. Because I tell you the truth, while I was preparing this topic, I had to call a colleague of ours who always helps us in all of this, and I had to tell him because I just couldn't stand it. Things that we did not perceive at all within what we are dealing with, and that due to a series of circumstances, we are now seeing that there is something else. Well, I don't want to wind up anymore. Let's get straight up to the point. They begin to search for a UFO under the Baltic Sea. The mysterious object was found last summer on the date of June the 2nd, 2012. This is the news. You can see here what it looks like, a galactic ship, to put it in some way. And now it is being said if this is a natural thing, rock, under the sea, or really it is something different. I don't know if it reminds you a bit of the Millennium Falcon, the Star Wars ship. Well, that's there. Of course, these straight cuts are surprising, but we already saw how the antediluvian world had really impressive constructions also, and that now are deep underwater. But of course, here it is speculated if this is part of a flying saucer. But look what other news had happened. Former Defense Minister Nick Pope foresees sighting of UFOs at the London Olympics. What? We are talking about a former defense minister, and he comments on this? Look what he tells us here. With the massive events that will occur in the summer, we are all on high alert for terrorism. You see what he is saying here. Massive events that will occur in the summer, and also relates it to terrorism. What do you mean? That war is going to break out in the summer in the Middle East, and terrorism is going to break out here? But we must also look beyond and be prepared for unfathomable facts. This gentleman is warning that there is going to be a massive arrival of UFOs. Here you have a whole writing in English from the Mail Online, where all this is explained, and a series of photographs of weapons that are being prepared in case there is an appearance of those famous UFOs. And he wonders if the weapons we have are valid to counteract this possible attack by aliens. Here you have it in Spanish. Keep an eye on the skies for saucers during the Olympic Games, warns the defense minister, an expert in UFOs. This gentleman says that he has planned for the worst results of attacks and the invasion, and that we must be prepared even for the most apparently unfathomable of these attacks. And he says that we must look up at the sky, and that we must consider to what extent our national security and our air security is in its right point to be able to prevent all of this and counteract it. The article is interesting. I leave it to you so that you can see it in your homes. Here are phrases about UFOs. You can see that they even talk about the air force of this country, the missiles, etc., etc. Well, but they are warning us that this is really going to happen, or what? Well, let's see now, in this other article, What weapons have already been prepared for all these things? Planes with lasers, strange ships. You see that they are different weapons. Do you know from where? From what organism? DARPA. Does that ring a bell? DARPA? Do you remember that we were showing a video where you could see a robot that looks like a Terminator doing push-ups on the ground, etc., etc., doing balances? Well, now it turns out that this same company has developed tremendous weapons in which they seem like science fiction weapons, but that are already totally real. Here are different pictures of these weapons, different technologies that can be used. And look now, this is taken from Rafapal. It tells us the CFR magazine wonders if the Pentagon has the right weapons to repel extraterrestrial aggression. I'm going to read to you what it says here because it's funny, really. Pay a lot of attention. Foreign Policy magazine, which is something like the Bible for international relations, edited by the most important think tank in the United States, the Council on Foreign Relations. We've already been talking about them on the conferences before. To give you an idea, all political consultants, professors and students of geopolitics buy this magazine. Just a week ago, on May the 30th, Foreign Policy Digital Edition published an article titled Battle on Earth. Does the Pentagon have the right weapons to counter an alien invasion? And what follows is a description of the weapons, some of them until now secret from DARPA. And what would be the arsenal to be used against this alien self-invasion? A new term being used from now on, he says. Apart from the weapons themselves, I am interested in highlighting that the usefulness of each one of them is explained by alluding to what we know about the aliens in the different movies. Among other things, the editors of the news, I insist, this magazine is the Bible for experts in world politics. They tell us that NASA puts the movie The Avengers as a training manual for the astronauts in the orbital station. But the films Prometheus, Space Battle, Avis and Sphere are also mentioned as an argument which shows that the profusion of films on this subject is a subliminal preparation for the great operata of this end of time of the terrorist self-attack. It is going to move on to the alien self-invasion to make us believe that our brothers from the stars are bad. Okay? Well, that is what he's commenting on here. And he continues to tell us and show us the different weapons that there are, what they can be used for in the event of this confrontation. And you could think, really? Do they go to such trouble in a magazine giving so many details if this does not have to happen? Well, we can see to what extent things will happen. But remember, 3 unclean spirits in the form of frogs, the Bible says, that they are going to take all the kings of the earth to prepare them for the great battle of Armageddon. Those strange beings, right? Who will they be? Demon spirits. Well, now we are going to see a video that is a compilation of paintings from antiquity in which strange shapes are shown. You will see that there are some where they really look like UFOs, others that there are like constellations in a certain way, which we will also talk about later. And you will even see a very characteristic character from the Oriental world, Buddha, with some things behind him that later we will see with an analysis of symbolisms who really was also behind this character. But let's go in and watch the video and let's not talk anymore. Go ahead. You have seen that in this review of these engravings, you see strange shapes in the skies, including some things giving off light, others objects with someone placed inside, and everything in space. It even seems that holes open up in the sky where objects come out. Well, definitely, it is what we've been presenting in the recent conferences, but seeing it in art, theoretically. Now, what does this mean? Well, evidently, you've seen something related with Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, etc. It's not everything like that, but, well, the curious thing is that there are pictures in this case that show quite surprising and strange things, as if people from years ago had really seen some things which we are also showing here now, but which they had already seen in their time. There may be other interpretations for these engravings, well, but the truth is that some are really amazing. You've also seen Buddha with a sphere with some colors behind. Always the relationship comes with the same thing. Solar cult, something that comes from another place. Well, it's nothing more than the same. You know that everything, all the Orientalist beliefs, they do not come from God precisely, but from the philosophy of the dragon. And we are talking about pagan cultures from so many years ago. Well, anyway, now look what there is here, this obelisk. I don't know if you can perceive that it is placed, as always, within a circle, but that this circle is a symbolism that we've already talked about many times. It's not any kind of circle, but it also has a spiral shape. This is in Madrid. Now, what does this strange shape, if I remember correctly, I think it's from Calatrava, who did this. We will now see a series of things that are closely related to this spiral symbology. What does all of this mean? Why is it in a place that there is an obelisk? We are going to see this dictionary of symbols and mysterious topics where it talks about the spiral. Look what you're going to see here. The spiral, or the set of round or square spiral guards, is usually considered a single indefinite continuum, but the spiral is also the exit of the repeating circle upwards, beyond the plane in search of verticality. Do you remember the first video that we showed in the first of this series of conferences, which last about 45 minutes, where you could see formations in the fields, that they also did it in 3 dimensions? Well, shapes appeared of this spiral also ascending upwards, right? Well, let's continue to see what it says here. In other words, the indefinite reiteration of the mental prison, or the liberation of it through a trip to the beyond, ultimately to the supracosmic. The spiral is relating us with something that transcends our world and takes us to the afterlife. The double spiral is another form of round trip withdrawn from that indefinite continuum that also symbolizes the universe and the polarity of the energies that constitute it perennially. The spiral is an exit from the plane as the possibility par excellence of, or even better, the realization of the universal possibility. The ascending and descending spiral constitutes the polarity of the double spiral and can be called volutive and involutive, the celestial ascent and descent into hell. Considering in this case the lower half of the figure as the plane of the earth and of man. In this circumstance and in the human being it is the navel, the central image of his figure, the omphalos. The navel, the center? Well, we'll talk a bit about that later too. But you can see that, for the moment, he speaks to us of the spiral as something that ascends upwards to celestial matters or descends to hell. Let's see what else. Likewise, this symbol is present in all traditions since archaic times, also in natural forms, schools of fish such as shells, some plant elements, vineyards, and in the drawings of certain animals, snakes. Attention to this, then we'll also talk about it. In the clouds, in tornadoes, in whirlpools of waters, in the human being, in the fingerprints in his ears, intestines, etc., etc., and even in the spiral forms that take your DNA. Spiral dances are common among archaic peoples. Do you know of these dancing in spinning dances? Why do they spin? We'll talk about that later too. Likewise, they are usually associated with labyrinths, with a spiral. It can also be considered the post-mortem journey, that is, the initiation journey, hence its relationship with the labyrinths that we have just mentioned and with the celestial spiral of the Milky Way. It tells us about death and the transcendence of what comes later. The caduceus is an axis staff in which two different spiral serpents are coiled, symbols of the cosmic currents of the universe. We can also associate it with the wind whirl and their cosmogonic function. Going back to the double spiral, we will say that it can be taken as both a macrocosmic and a microcosmic expression, and it always means the definition at a point which symbolizes what progresses or diminishes without end, what multiplies or divides it indefinitely, as well be it the ever-recent knowledge of the stellar or the subatomic that must necessarily be resolved at a point, unit that gives place to what it is, thus being the affirmation of what is not, that is, of the truly infinite that has no numerical representation. In other words, what will always be beyond everything that can grow or decrease in any field whatsoever. You can see that they talk to us about numbers again, right? If we also realize that this process is the one in which we are included, like all those beings, phenomena or things, and that this is happening now since these spirals are simultaneous, we will notice the perpetual presence, and we will be surprised by the constant mirage in that we live together with the totality of our fellow men. Did you understand anything? I hope so. Well, we already realize from what they are telling us that the symbol of the spiral is something that unites celestial things with even the demonic part. That it can make us go very well or it can lead us to a very bad place. That it carries a transcendence over life, that it has no computation in number, that is eternity, immortality of the soul in short. Remember that biblically, the immortality of the soul is a great fraud. It is not biblical. When we die, and we neither reincarnate nor go anywhere. We are dead. And until Jesus returns a second time, there is no resurrection of the dead. So, if that doctrine is not biblical, it does not come from God. It is what they mean by the spiral. But we will see more things that will surprise us and introduce a little more into all of this. The Hebrew letters, the mystical meaning of the Hebrew letters, Samech, the infinite circle. You see, like a spiral, eh? They never end. The circular shape of the Samech symbolizes the fundamental faith reflected in all levels of Torah and reality. Its end is inserted in the beginning and the beginning in its end. This understanding and perception of the inherent unity between beginning and end, which when understood in depth implies equanimity in all stages of the infinite cycle. It is in fact the manifestation of the transcendent light of God, which equally encompasses every point of reality. This transcendental light, present at all times, is called He is the equality and equal of the small and the great. In our service to God, this implies that in relation to the phenomena of the world, all things must be related and accepted equally. This is the attribute of equanimity as taught by the Baal Shem Tov in his interpretation of the verse, I have always set God before me, from the root Shabbat Wow. While at outer levels of consciousness one must remain aloof from the passing events of the world, at deeper levels of consciousness, in relation to souls and divinity, one must constantly aspire to achieve higher and higher levels of attachment and approach to God and carry out His will in creation throughout Torah and Mitzvot. You can see that he's using typical Hebrew words and it has a full relationship with his beliefs. Take a look at what it says now. In Hasidism, it is explained that the saying of the sages, whoever is rich, he who is content with his lot, refers only to worldly positions, while in relation to spiritual matters, we should never be satisfied with our present acquisitions, but rather strive for more. However, as our striving takes place within the general context of external equality, it also becomes like a circle, a spiral, with an ever-ascending dynamic movement. In this way, the dynamic circle exists within another static circle. This is the secret of the phrase of Ezekiel's vision, the wheel within the wheel. Does it ring a bell? We have already been analyzing it with the biblical text here. For them, it is a spiral. It is going towards a dynamic movement. What is it trying to tell us with all this? Well, let's move forward and we will see even more things with which they are relating it. Here you have, well, more explanation. It is worthwhile for you to see this carefully in your homes. It is speaking to us about everything practically, souls, etc., etc. But that symbol, that letter, is also related to the number 60. The number 60? Do you remember the base of 6? In the 82nd conference, we were talking also about the number 6, about its meaning, how the sexagesimal system, we still maintain it, even with our hours, with our calendars and many more things. Well, the number 6, in this case 60, which is associated with that letter, gives us here a series of explanations about it, and even quotes biblical texts where the number 60 appears. Let's see something else, where he tells us Shabbat is the 60th of the world to come. He's talking about the Sabbath, the Saturday. It is also related with what? Something that takes us up, something that takes us to spirituality, something that takes us to infinity, to eternity. But, well, we are talking about what these people think. We are going to continue looking for more things. Universal Golden Spiral. This is the name that this entity, this group, has named itself. As you can see, a spiral at the top. What is this about? Self-help, self-esteem, personal growth, change of consciousness, coaching, rebirthing. The famous self-help books and other meetings that are held, which we have already seen many times how they end up in mental disorders depending on which people, even with schizophrenia, hearing voices. Well, let's see what it tells us here. From the Universal Golden Spiral, we offer you a wide range of workshops, conferences, colloquiums and activities aimed at achieving to increase your self-esteem, realizing personal growth and a change of consciousness with self-help methods that will allow you to be happy, enjoy health, live with joy, etc. They don't put God here. They don't put God here at all, nor follow what God says. It says here that you can achieve certain things with this spiral system. God always remains on the sidelines. You know that Satan has always had that purpose. God is not going to have anything to do with it. But let's continue. Here you have more about these people. Even look at how what you can see here caught my attention. A crisis? What crisis? The economic crisis comes from a crisis of values. Are you realizing that they are also using the same words that the Vatican has used, that the Vatican is still using? Do you realize how behind it there is a connection to exactly the same thing, a crisis of values in general? Let's move on. golden spiral activation, the 10th of the 11th of the 9th, and the 11th of the 11th of the 11th, the portal of the rose. And here we already see how they are in one of their meetings, which obviously always talks about light, love for everyone, etc. It's curious that whenever one speaks of these terms, truth really matters very little, because under the cloak of love, it covers everything. And that is partly true, but love, which is very good and must be had, there's no reason to destroy the truth. A love that destroys the truth truly isn't love. It is a deception. But well, normally these people work like this. And there will be very sincere people and people who are not so sincere, but evidently they are going down a really wrong path. When they use the 11th of the 11th of the 11th, obviously you can see for what it is, for a portal. It's a form of opening portals. Do you know that the opening of a portal means that there can be a manifestation of light or something similar to that, of consciousness, of states of conscience, etc. What does it mean? Well, many times in these portals, deep down, they are invocations that give way to demons. And they don't even know it. They don't even know it. Reminder of the spiral activation, golden distance of the 14th of October 2009. Continuing to work with this symbol, the spiral. Golden spiral. The earth has already been awakened. Now we have a massive awakening. It is in our hands. They are telling us that life has come to a point in these years in which it is time for there to be a massive awakening of the world population for a change of consciousness. This will be so? Partly yes, and partly no. The world is not going to be fixed, because there are channels of messages from nobody. Look, obviously there are symbols everywhere. It is no longer necessary to comment on them. Look what it says here. Golden Spiral is a group that begins its journey in 2007. The heart of the group are three sisters who at one point began to channel messages from beings residing in Lemuria. Is this next to Valladolid? No, evidently it is in some part of the cosmos. It's talking about that aliens made them channel these messages. These in the Bible are not extraterrestrial beings on no planet. These are called demons. And we were seeing how Nikola Tesla was suffering from exactly the same thing with which he could even design UFOs. Well, it turns out that you can see what these things are linked to. Prophets of God? No. To satanic canalizations. Once again. Let's go and see even more things. Look at this other page, where what do? Whoever cultivates the golden mean avoids the poverty of a slum and the envy of a palace, says an ancient Roman poet. Shape of the golden spiral. Are you seeing what it consists of? A triangle for a change from which a spiral emerges. The key to the physics of the cosmos. Plato. The number, golden mean, phi. The number pi. It is not the typical number pi, but this is the other pi, phi. It is a constant value that is even more mysterious and profound in its implications than the famous pi. Since phi is a number with no arithmetic solution. The decimals simply continue to infinity without ever repeating. The unique thing about this number is that it can be incorporated into all known organic structures, from the bone structure of humans to the pattern of sunflower seeds. To the spiral of a seashell, the ratio phi is there, underscoring all biological structures that appear to be a geometric blueprint for life itself. This is no joke. This is true. We will see how Leonardo da Vinci knew this also, and great masters of art and science have known it. we had been talking also about this gentleman who had made calculations about the famous Pyramid of Giza. Do you remember? We were showing it here, also based on this number. But you see that all this tells us that original geometric project for life itself. Who has made life? Has it made itself? Has it been whims of the forces of the cosmos, an energy of a non-personified universe? Christians do not doubt that it has been God. And God, who is the perfect mathematician, and he continually demonstrates it, made things perfectly, and also used numbers for many things. Plato has gone further and called the relationship phi the key to the physics of the cosmos. Here it says the number is calculated. You see 1.6180303, etc., etc. And while it cannot be calculated arithmetically, it can be easily obtained with a compass and a ruler. And that's how it works. As you can see, it's this spiral that, well, if we also see it here, it gets bigger and bigger in its turn. It's not a totally rounded spiral, but it gets longer, right? You have a galaxy there that works like this. You have also a shell here also. And this is done with a progression of growth of number patterns. Well, here you have everything explained. This is in nature. Design of nature. God has done things very, very well. Here you have the symbols that they use to do this. Obviously, the little triangle cannot fail, but you can see the spiral together. Aerial photographs show that the pyramids of Giza are positioned in such a way that they fall on a line that exactly defines a Fibonacci spiral. The spiral passes exactly through the center of each pyramid. When they did these things, they also knew all of this. Here you have a transformative morphology, a hexagon. He says that it is solid from the past, a sphere that is liquid, a circle that is present. But as you can see, in the gas form, in the future, a spiral. What does this have to do with all of this? Well, we'll see even more things today. There is a certain religious empire that also uses some of these symbols, if not all three, and about which we have been talking continuously in these conferences. Today we will see how they use the other two. We have already been seeing them, but we are going to see how they use precisely this spiral. Now let's see these natural spirals, those that arise from nature. A tornado, right? What shape is it? Spiral. It's spiraling down, it ascends up, right? A squall. It is also in form of what? A spiral. And always they turn in a specific direction. Here you have, once again, a tornado, a closer image. And what is this? A drain. How does water go down a drain? All time like this? No, it goes around in circles, in a spiral, until it is swallowed. Here you have more or less how this process works, and seen carefully how the water also descends like this. But look how in nature it is also found even in the sunflower. Do you see it? What shape it has? It's a spiral. But what else? In DNA, it is also a spiral. In different plants, you already see forms of what? Spirals. Even where? Where do we see spirals? In masses of rocks. Formations of rocks. You see also here another photo of something from space. How? In shape of a spiral. And in this way we are seeing different things that appear in the same way. Galaxies, plants, perfect spirals. Here you have the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, immeasurable movement of the universe, mathematics and geometry. Well, take a look at the symbols that they use. Does this one sound familiar, the one on the right? Can you see this sphere and some colors that come out from the top and go to the bottom and vice versa? You remember also the first conference, that kind of energy that moves everything in the whole universe? Well then, we are going to see a bit how everything works as well, like this, in this type of spiral. Here you have it. The roses too. You have all the mathematical arrangements of how all this works. And we will see even more stuff. All of this is a close-up to some flowers. Ramifications of how this process works. These symmetries that exist in the universe. And also look, for example, at this seashell split in half. What does it look like? Can you see how it works? The ellipse is becoming more and more elongated, right? Look at this shape, because later we're going to see it in a different way. We can continue with the same thing. You can see that the symbols also come out between these things. The logarithmic spiral, it's the spiral of time. You can see the proportion of how it works. Since they are little, they get longer and longer and longer in different numbers. Cosmic science, they tell us, in terms of notes and colors as well. And now, it's curious, enchanted waves, 13 creative tones, 13. The number 13 has even more implication than what we have been seeing in the conferences. There is still more than all of that. It is a sequence that is already present in nature. The number 13 is the 7th unit and includes the entire enchanted wave. We can see this in the forms of nature, and when we reach 21 it will always be the 8th of the next enchanted wave, and thus it goes on describing numerical processes that are also in nature and what they apply them to. But you can see something here below. You see this human figure? The human body contains the golden ratio between its parts. Here the photo has been cut off, but everything also comes from a central point, the navel, you remember? And in circles, lengthening until we return to the previous image. Sorry, I made a mistake when pressing the key. Thank you. You can see where the circumferences arrive, arms stretched out, and it reaches out until the proportion of its head. This is the golden ratio. The cartoonists must also master this if they want to do their job well. Here you have the DNA, also in that spiral shape. And this is the DNA. It's something that is very small to see, right? And the navel also has a strange shape. But we are going to see that the spirals are also in the 5 senses and those rounded shapes. In the ears, in the ear canal. When you see this, you always think of the joke of Eugenio, which is a Spanish comedian. Well, they are in nature, in the ear. Exactly, we've seen the ear, now we can see the sight, also circles. You can see the eye, the iris. In the fingerprints, you can see too how it starts exactly the same. It makes spirals. On the nose, that's through these little holes later inside, we find all this red pituitary, which is the mucus that covers the lower parts of the nose and warms the inspired air. You can see that it is also like a maze here. Before we talked about labyrinths. Well, let's keep these concepts, as we will obviously assimilate And when you open your mouth, also in a circular way. But look how also in taste, the taste buds have this shape. In the senses in general, there are these forms that transcend. But look, and in the sixth sense, what is the sixth sense that is talked about so much? Do you remember the third eye that is discussed so much in movies, books, and so many other things? Well, in the brain, what do you see? What shape do you see the brain has? Well, as if it were a maze, right? We will see more things about it. You can see that within this labyrinth, which is the brain, is a place where there is the hypothalamus and that famous pineal gland. Here it is known by many as the third eye, as they say. That's when it is affected by drug substances or by having been in spiritualism or in New Age things, and likewise, you can get to see very strange things, or you can hear voices. Well, all of this, where is it? In the maze of our brain. There's a relationship between what is spiral, round, or circles, labyrinths, with a transcendence that encompasses the macrocosm and the microcosm. Our knowledge of what we are, that we are hardly anything until God. And this is in the shape of our organs too. But as you can see, these are also natural spirals. Galaxies are spirals. They go much further. But now let's look at those spirals that can be artificial. In hypnosis, you remember the famous spiral with which is used to hypnotize, that when it begins to spin, it turns you a bit stupid. Well then, why is the spiral used? Because something is affected in your mind. In logotypes, well, let's see. The one from Munich 1972, remember this event? What spiral did they have? Also in black and white. Does it remind you of the one you saw previously in the image? To this one? Curious, right? They play with symbology, and we are not realizing it many times. And look how Gaudí, the architect of the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, was also working on this staircase in the same way, on the same concepts that the esoteric world also has. You already know that it has been said many times that Gaudí was a Freemason apart from being a Catholic, although officially they say that they do not want to recognize it. Here you still have a photo where it looks even better, and here even better. But you can see that he also used the columns in the Güell Park in Barcelona. In what shape? Or spirals. But look, this is no longer Barcelona, this is Rome, and this is the Vatican. And what do you see here, too? The same geometry, spirals. Why would that be? And what do we see here in the Basilica of St. Peter? The canopy. You can see these strange columns made by Bernini, of which we've already spoken here about, and you already know what he was placed on as well. Well, look at what kind of columns this gentleman also made. You can see in what spiral shape. Are we realizing that knowing these things, they were linking them to something else? And when the Catholic congregation goes there, they do not have any idea why this is there. They are being taken by a cosmic transcendence, which obviously is not going to take them to God, but to the other side. Labyrinths. Well, here you have circular labyrinths, or this one that appears in the Cathedral of Chartres in France. What is this doing in a cathedral, if everything is of the same symbology?